You know when you're making a prop or a 3D piece of an environment art or any art in general, and you kind of struggle, but then you're experimenting and you're trying this and that, and like it's fun, you innovate and you create something you wouldn't have thought about at the start. I had a little bit of that going on with this project, so come, let me show you. Back when I started creating the meshes for the edges of the road, I first wanted to rely more on geometry, not on texture. My initial draft showcased lots of individual edge pavement stones haphazardly scattered around and about, as if the space had been left to the elements for a very long time and every stone had come unloose and undone. I believed that had lots of merit as an idea, but to me it looked incredibly busy. I wanted to insert some visuals that look stylized and like World of Warcraft. And as such, I ended up creating flatter edge stones. On top of those, I hand painted some gold variants, like gold trim texture. I went through a few different iterations of that, and at the end I was certain it's going in the right direction. That's when I paused the edge stone work and I moved on to making some bushes, some grass, and then hand painting the gateway textures. That is from the previous video, by the way, so go back and watch it. The gateway gold trims inspired me and I loved how my texturing on those came out, and as such, once I was back to giving the path some attention, I really wanted to try out some of those elegant gold trims, but scattered at the edges of the road. The idea was simple: take the gate gold trim and twist it around like a hair lock. I'm talking about the geometry here. You can see me do exactly that in Blender. It was tons of fun. I used my usual approach of putting a solidify modifier on a flat plane and then twisting and extruding it in different directions, whilst also applying a secondary modifier, a subdivision modifier. I made this log. It was like two strands of chain of ropes or like some type of a crochet. I believe that each element twisting around the other, a bit like snakes, was the perfect piece I needed for the side of the road. I exported this version and I tried it in Unreal Engine. After testing it in there, I realized it isn't really working. I wasn't overly worried, to be fair, not yet. I mean, I was a bit bummed out that it didn't really work out immediately and that it didn't read exactly as I wanted it to, but I didn't want to abandon the idea. I was sure there is something in there and that it's just a matter of pattern, scale or color in order to make it work. My gut feeling was telling me that it's too busy. As such, two strands of rope twisting around one another wasn't going to cut it. I had to cut one of them out. I scaled down to using just one twisting strand. To make up for the fact that it's a lonely strand, I increased its scale. That gave it a bulkier appearance and an easier to read shape language. I also had the idea that the end of the chain could point upwards, as if trying to touch the portal and the threshold of the portal that is emitting an energy signature. I slowly abandoned that idea though, as it worked through one camera angle, but then refused to look good through any of the other cameras. I went through all these tests here, seen on the screen. You can compare and see my progress. Simplifying to one strand indeed was working quite well. Next, I needed some stone to support the underside of the gold strand. After that, I needed a corner piece. I refined quickly those and my final test looked like this. I'm still very fond of my first approach and the texture-only version. I think those have a retro World of Warcraft charm to them. What I'm making, I want to look next gen though, and like fitting the current World of Warcraft. The game has much more geometry and detail than it did back in the day, and I believe that these geometrical capstones that I made here reflect that quite a bit better. Next up, I just have to paint some textures on them. Before getting into texturing the pathway, the snake trims, I went back to the side crystal lanterns to give them some attention as well, the props. I had blocked them out previously to a state that I liked. I had even went as far as to UV map some parts. So now it was the time to finally hand paint some textures on top of them. One approach for this would be to take the geometry I did in Blender, subdivide and then hand sculpt in ZBrush. The sculpted detail I could then bake down to a low poly mesh. In Painter, the baked down version and the corresponding textures result as curvature, ambient occlusion and thickness I could use to speed up my hand painting process through. It's a fine way to do things, but I didn't want to overly complicate things. I believe that in World of Warcraft, a lot of artists often create a low poly from the start and then hand paint on top of it in Painter, Photoshop or 3D Code without any complex sculpts. There would be, of course, some exceptions, like making a complicated sculpture that is like an effigy or a totem and so on, but those would indeed need ZBrush. But for my case here, I was keen on trying out low poly in Blender and then just hand painting some textures directly on top. On the stone surfaces of the lamp, I slowly built up some gold trims surfacing. After I had painted those shapes, I colored and textured the stone surfaces as well. The side wings were next. For them, I already knew the colors and the values I was going to use. As in the previous episode of this video series, I covered creating the portal threshold prop extensively. It was golden trim leaves and snakes on the sides. And now I reused what I learned there and very quickly painted the wings on this lamp prop. Finally, I painted some rudimental detail on the red floating crystal that's seen in the middle. I didn't like it at all, but I left it to a sketch state for now, favoring wanting to move on to other elements that have gold on them and texturing and finishing that first. The red gem I was going to polish whenever I got around to texturing the giant massive red crystals in the rest of the scene next to the portal. Here is the red crystal lantern prop before my hand painting and the work in this video, and here it is after. As mentioned before, having painted multiple gold surfaces in this project so far, like lots of them, meant that I knew the colors and values I needed for the gold on the snake ribbons edge trims for the road. I took a screenshot of the Obidu hand painting of the side of my portal, the gold leaves. I then projected that onto the gold trims prop. Painter has that ability and it's rather useful. You just drag and drop a screenshot or an image and it just lets you project it. From there, I color picked all of my needed colors for the gold and the stone, and I slowly extended by hand painting all of the details onto all of the surfaces seen on these edge props. It was a rather quick task. I think that these trims work a few times better than the flat stones I had tried previously, and you can see the comparison of the two on the screen right now. I think this is enough art covered for today, if I'm being honest with you. Stay tuned, subscribe and click the bell button, as soon I'll be making another video in this diorama series. I think we're wrapping up all of the project soon, so stay tuned. In the next video, we'll look at my process for refining the geometry and shapes of my clusters of large red crystals. After the geometry is refined, we'll quickly UV map, and from there we'll hand paint the textures. I think you will like what you see. Thank you very much for being with me today. Have a good one. If you want to watch more, head to my channel where I have free tutorials for you on topics like Unreal 5, Blender, VFX and a lot more. Thank you very much. See you next time. I refined quickly those and my final test looked like this.